So how did people react? How did the media react after they found out the truth? Well, let's start with the president. I'm interested to see what he had to say about 500,000 people gathering on the premise of God and honor. Here he is on NBC Sunday when asked for his reaction on the 828 Restoring Honor event.
I have to say I did not watch the rally. Given all those anxieties and given the fact that, you know, in none of these situations are you going to fix things overnight, it's not surprising that somebody like a Mr. Beck is able to stir up a certain portion of the country. That's been true throughout our history.
I have been told that no broadcaster in the history of America has ever done anything like this. I have also been told today that no single individual has ever called 500,000 people to the mall, and they arrived. Ever. But he's not surprised. Of course, he wasn't even watching. This is the kind of thing that happens all the time throughout history. All throughout history. These people like Glenn Beck or Mr. Beck show up. Well, I didn't know exactly who he might be thinking of, but it's good that we have everyone's favorite reporter, Joe Klein. He took it a step further and explained.
The guy's obviously a paranoid lunatic who is a great entertainer, and he is exploiting something that always happens in our country when the economy is bad and when we're at war. During World War I, if people were caught speaking German in the street, other people would beat them up. During World War II, we interned the Japanese, and now the combination of bad economic times over the last couple of years and the terrorism has led to this wave that Glenn Beck and his puppet master, Rupert Murdoch, are exploiting.
I'm actually beginning to feel bad or sad for some of these people. But Joe, since you brought history into the mix, you're right. We did round up Germans during World War I, and you were right. If you spoke out against the war, you'd be tossed in jail. And you were right, we did round up the Japanese. You left out the Germans and the Italians that we rounded up during World War II, but we put them in war displacement camps. It's nice. There's just one little fact, Joe, that you forget to point out, and that's really critical to the history lesson. It's the who part of the rounding up process. Who was rounding people up? In World War I, it was Woodrow Wilson. In World War II, it was FDR. Both big government progressives. So yes, we did round people up, but it was never someone on the outside like me who did it. It was always big progressive government. Now, here's the Huffington Post. I'm going to show you this, because this shows you the contempt for the things that I think most Americans value. It's Glenn Beck's Restoring Honor rally. This is the quote, "The most ridiculous messages in photos." The most ridiculous messages in photos. Here are the most ridiculous. Go to the first, there it is. September 11th, this is ridiculous. This is a quote from George Washington, ridiculous. Restoring honor, ridiculous. This woman, some reason, is ridiculous. This man is ridiculous. Someone with George Washington, the Constitution, ridiculous. May I ask, do you stand with the Huffington Post on those things being ridiculous? Why are they ridiculous? Now the reports of the crowd size. Let me show you perhaps the most iconic image from the event. This, I believe, was taken from the AP or by the AP, and God bless them for doing it. It is absolutely stunning. Remember, just the reflecting pool alone, I told you last week, this is 200,000 people. There are people, you can see them here and here and here, and we have photos down both of these paths at glennbeck.com. There are people, look at them, all throughout the trees. Plus here, this is the end of the block, or the end of the reflecting pool. It goes across the street and the crowd picks up again. This is completely filled all around the Lincoln Memorial. Back to the Washington Monument. To be exact, the length from the base of the Lincoln Memorial to the Washington Monument is 8/10 of a mile. And it was almost completely filled with people. So here's the crowd size reporting. NBC says tens, perhaps hundreds of thousands. Associated Press apparently didn't look too close at their own picture and said tens of thousands. I've seen lots of others echoing the AP at tens of thousands. CNN wouldn't pick a number. They compared the task to counting the crowd. It's like how many jelly beans are inside a huge jar, end quote. CBS strangely put the number at 87,000. Well, that's a pretty specific number there. Well, you're sure it wasn't 93,412? We'll never know the exact number, but anyone with eyes can see this crowd was in the hundreds of thousands. Traffic was clogged in D.C. after the event and before the event. Metro workers said they have never seen anything like it. The lines at the Metro subway stretched 2 football fields. They had to wait hours in lines just to get on the subway to get to the event. Restoring honor, which was the #1 topic on Google Trends for much of Saturday. Glenn Beck rally and Sarah Palin were also at the top of the Google search's hot list category throughout the day. Over 100,000 people were streaming on the event on the live Facebook event. It was carried on C-SPAN. I can't wait to see the numbers. By our estimates, this event falls about the 6th largest, all-time largest crowd at the mall. That is tied with the inauguration of Ronald Reagan. So the media can diminish the crowd size all they want, but the images speak for themselves. Gee, who thought we should have many, many photographers and cameras? And who happened to have a ticket at 10 o'clock at the top of the Washington Monument and a photographer there so we could capture these things? Oh, I guess that would be us. Fool us once. And shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Of course, the press hasn't hesitated in the past to give high estimates on Obama crowds. He's drawn some pretty huge crowds. After all, it's happened in history before, as he says. When there's trouble, someone like this usually appears. Here's a picture of 80,000 people in Denver. These numbers are all taken by the press. Here is 200,000 people in Berlin. Here is 100,000 people in St. Louis. By the way, we took this one, St. Louis, because the media happily settled on 100,000 people for that speech. Everyone agrees, 100,000. We knew the reports would, they would underestimate 828's crowd, and we knew that the media wouldn't get the message, and they didn't. And they didn't. Tomorrow's program, we're going to show you how many 100,000 St. Louis crowd areas can fit into the area that we just showed you at the mall. I want to show you the lead stories. The lead stories in the newspaper are here. I'm grateful that this is all in the news, but I read all of these stories, or much of these stories, and it would be nice if they reported on what we talked about. But all they reported on is things like it wasn't a Tea Party, it wasn't racist, it wasn't violent, it was peaceful. Well, has anybody filed a story on what it was about? Did anyone bother to report on the Black Robe Regiment? We had 240 men and women of the cloth on stage. Pastors, priests, rabbis, and yes, imams, linked arms. They were talking about the big principles of life. We talked about, there they are as they were coming on, we talked about faith and God. Did anybody think that maybe we should, I don't know, report on that? I issued a challenge, 40 days and 40 nights. It's a challenge based on the Declaration of Independence. Did anyone think that that was worth noting? Here's the story the press gave you in the end. This was a rally that was nonviolent, not racist, and not a Tea Party. And 87,000 people showed up. Yet the media also is reporting that history was made. Well, how? Why? I'm going to tell you something now that no one knows. On Saturday night, I woke my family up. It was about 11 o'clock when I got the news that the Smithsonian had called. They want items from the event preserved for the Smithsonian. Well, gee, now, why would America's Museum of History want something about a rally that had 87,000 people and just wasn't racist? Is that something worthy of being in a museum or being held in archives? The reason it's not reported is the media doesn't understand things like this. And the other reason is because those who do understand know that if it's explained and you understand what it really is, it could change the course of our country. More on that next.
Oh, say can you see?
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise and join me in the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.